Ryan Gosling, a man the internet has been infatuated with for what feels like, I think, at least over a decade at this point. From his early meme incarnations for being labeled as one of the literally me categories of people, everyone online just can't seem to get enough of him, and that feeling surely isn't going away due to him starring in the movie that we'll be talking about in this video. Project Hail Mary is directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who's mainly known for making such classics as the 21 Jump Street duology, the Lego Movie, and is somewhat responsible for the Spider-Verse movies. However, did you know the two of them actually never directed those movies? They're just writers on it. I only found out about that recently. This movie stars Ryan Gosling, Sandra Hüller, James Ortiz, and Lionel Boyce. The plot follows science teacher Ryland Grace, who wakes up on a spaceship light years from home, with no recollection of who he is and how he got there. As his memory returns, he begins to uncover his mission, solve the riddle of the mysterious substance causing the sun to die out. He must call on his scientific knowledge and unorthodox ideas to save everything on Earth from extinction, but an unexpected friendship means he may not have to do it alone. I've been pretty excited to check this movie out since at least a year, because for some reason I remember they dropped the teaser trailer for this thing over a year ago before its release. They really wanted this thing in people's heads for a long time to come, and I don't blame them, because generating the amount of hype over a long period is a surefire way to get people to go out and see your movie. It sure as hell worked for me, and now that I've seen it, I want to talk about it. And I'm gonna start by talking about the performances, leading with Ryan Gosling. Gosling is known for his roles in movies like La La Land and Drive. I thought he did great in this role. He's solidified himself for a while now that he's more than capable of being a leading man, as he finds a way to always make the most of his screen presence whenever the cameras are on him. He just oozes charisma for a majority of the time when he shares the screen with other characters, as he has this natural aura about him, which creates great banter with people, which again comes from his easygoing, charismatic nature. There's a good few moments where Gosling has to deal with a lot of emotional weight, and I feel like he pulls this off realistically to the point where you easily sympathize with his character and the situations in which he's placed in, which comes up frequently throughout the runtime. The movie is mainly a comedy, while not completely laugh out loud like something like The Nice Guys. It still has moments where Gosling's comedic chops do shine, as he always has really well done comedic timing, which earned a few laughs out of me. Sandra Hüller is in this movie too. She's known for movies like Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest. I thought Hüller did a good job in her role. The way her character progresses throughout the runtime is very interesting to see. For most of the time in the movie, she's mainly pretty stoic, as this is something she, I suppose, has somewhat come to be known as for her roles. There's times with the way she speaks, she's able to manipulate people around her, which makes you question how to feel about her character and the morality of his character, as she pulls this aspect of her character off pretty well too. There's minor times throughout the movie where she has to handle some emotional moments of her own, and she conveys this to a realistic extent too. James Ortiz provides the voice talent of Rocky, which is the alien supporting character in this movie. Ortiz previously had some puppeteering work for other movies, and even during the process of this movie, and this seems like to be his debut voice acting role in a major work, which is pretty cool to see. Ortiz does a good job at emulating what a voice would sound like coming from a computer. It's impressive despite taking on the challenge of sounding artificial. Ortiz does a good job at having Rocky convey different emotions through this method. There's times you hear panic or excitement in his voice, and it can be very endearing whenever he was on screen. For me, he stole all the scenes that he was present in. With the main performances out of the way, I'm going to talk about the story. This movie runs at 156 minutes, so there's obviously a lot of story to get through. On top of this being an adaptation of a novel, which has led some people to say a lot of stuff has been both cut out of the movie and slightly changed around a bit. Now, I hadn't read the book before going into this, so this aspect doesn't bother me too much. What really does bother me though is the way the plot is structured in this movie. The movie follows a non-linear structure, which that aspect itself I don't mind too much, as I feel like this can be a useful device for storytelling. However, I feel like we spend way too much time in the past over the course of the runtime of this movie. There are long stretches of time where we spend the movie with Grace and Rocky in space, where you almost forget that the past has been cut back to a couple of times before, and then suddenly it does cut back, and it feels like it brings the pacing to a slog a little bit. My main complaint as to why they do this is I feel like the more we cut back to the past, it makes less sense, as there are never any new major revelations made when we see the past come back again. We find out very early on that Grace wasn't the only pilot on the ship, and I thought to myself, okay, it'll be interesting seeing these other characters later and feeling the dread when you know what's coming. action. But unfortunately, I feel like these characters aren't developed enough, barely so, as much as they could be, for me to care about their known fates. While this movie doesn't have the same structure, consider something like Alien. That movie spends a good at least 30 minutes with its characters before they start getting killed off. We have time to get to know these people, which makes you feel bad for what happens to them, and I understand that Project Hail Mary is more about one person, so maybe they don't want to draw attention away from his character, but I still do feel like we spend too much time in the past. The only other sort of big thing is that there is a twist in the very last flashback that does, albeit, reveal a pretty big plot point, but I wish there was more of that throughout, because otherwise the flashbacks majorly detract from the overall story for me. However, when a lot of the story is taking place in space, it works a lot better. There's a good few moments where we feel the weight of Grace's loneliness, and there's points of humor that's done well that seems similar to the author of the book's other work, The Martian. Whenever Rocky shares the screen with Gosling, it is a delight. The chemistry he's able to bounce off the creature is so delightful to watch, and I think it really helps that Rocky in this movie is a puppet, which I'll get into more detail when I talk about the visual effects. There's a great emotional chord to this, more so from the themes of isolation and just making you care for the relationship between Grace and Rocky especially. You spend so much time with these two, so when they're put into certain situations, you really care for the two of them. Along with this, there are some really well done tense moments that are points of action that aren't the usual action that we're used to in movies, but it makes for a really entertaining time at the movies. Moving on, I want to talk about cinematography, which was done by Greg Fraser, who's done cinematography for movies like Dune and The Batman. I believe Fraser was born to shoot sci-fi movies. The majority of this thing looks incredible, and I can imagine seeing this in IMAX would be pretty mind-blowing. The use of different colors in this movie are really well done. They're all really bright and colorful with different contrasting colors from time to time, and it makes me believe that Fraser really knows how space should look in movies. There are a good few wide shots at times that really further show Grace's isolation, which I thought made for good visuals. Along with that, there are great uses of silhouettes throughout the movie, which I think is another aspect that Fraser nails super well. An aspect of filmmaking in this movie that I appreciated is that through certain methods, the visual effects of this movie look genuinely incredible. I saw before going into this that all of the visual effects for this movie was done in camera, which made me have faith in this completely, that it was gonna look good, and it truly pays off, as there is never really an effect that looks too bad. The major effect in this movie that of course is great is Rocky himself. Rocky is operated by at least 4 or 5 puppeteers, and it really pays off, as for the entire runtime he just looks real to me, and I think this aspect really helps you care for his character, as he looks so real in scenes. The emotional scenes work really well because in a technical sense Rocky is real, which makes me think a lot more movies that will probably need to rely on visual effects need to go the practical route, or at least put a lot of effort into how the effects look, because it really elevates everything that's going on. I feel like it keeps you invested in both the story and characters itself, which is why I believe this movie will be remembered for quite a long time after its release. Next, I want to talk about the music. The original score for this movie is composed by Daniel Pemberton, who is a frequent collaborator with Lord and Miller projects, as he composed music for the Spider-Verse movies. The score for this movie could honestly be one of his best, shortly behind the Spider-Verse movies, of course. I really liked the score for this because there were times where it felt like the score was trying to harken back to blockbuster movies back in the day. It sounded like something you'd hear in a Spielberg movie, for how whimsical a lot of it is, which is something Pemberton seems to be known for at this point. There's a good deal of choral vocals, which add a lot of texture to the music too. There are quite a few uses of licensed music in this that I thought were pretty good. Almost, if not all of the needle drops in this movie were all well chosen. A pretty big song that's all over the advertisements for this movie is Sign of the Times by Harry Styles, which is featured in a prominent scene where Sandra Hüller's character performs an emotionally charged karaoke performance in this scene. Other songs that are featured in the movie are from artists like Chris Christopherson, Ella Fitzgerald, Neil Diamond, and a very well placed needle drop which features Two of Us by the Beatles. The scene it's placed in is wonderfully done and could honestly be one of my favorite moments in the whole movie. Well, all that being said, I did like this movie quite a lot. I do think, to an extent, it's getting a little bit overhyped as of the time of me writing this. It currently has a 4.4 on Letterboxd, which I believe is outrageously high for my money. I don't see it as the flawless masterpiece that everyone is hailing it as, no pun intended, but I can't deny that it's a wonderful spectacle of a movie. I managed to see this on the biggest screen that was available to me locally, and I think it was a decent format to see the movie in, though I would have preferred to see this in IMAX. This is definitely a strong movie from Lord & Miller, but I don't think it's their best. I think to an extent what detracts from that is that it's not exactly a comedy. There are comedic moments throughout the movie for sure, but Lord & Miller at this point have kind of cemented themselves as comedy directors and writers. I feel like I'd soon rather watch the Jump Street franchise before this again, but obviously these are very different movies and there is so much grandeur present here, and I feel like the teamwork from different departments made for such an impressive work of art, because at the end of the day that is what this is. Even if I don't think every single aspect works to its full potential, it's still really great, which is why I'm giving Project Hail Mary 4 stars. This is a great movie which is home to some really entertaining performances with Ryan Gosling at the helm leading a great effort. While I don't think this is an absolute career best from him, it's no understatement that he is so great here, and so is the majority of the other actors here. While I didn't get to mention them in my performance section, some of these smaller performances were just as entertaining to me. This thing is gorgeous from start to finish, thanks to the work of Fraser, who just knows how to make a good looking movie with the assistance of whoever is directing. There's an incredible display of visual effects which I know for a fact for the next while will get compared to any other movie that will have an overabundance of pretty bad CGI, as this movie will set the standard for both how a sci-fi movie should look and how visual effects can be utilized to their full potential. This movie is currently running in theaters, and I fully encourage anyone watching this video to see this on the biggest screen they can, because honestly it really does deserve it, as it feels like it was made to be viewed in such a format. But on top of that, just like any movie, it deserves to be seen in the cinema.